Hi guys, welcome back to my channel, Monkey Wrench. I'm Kelly, the monkey with the wrench. Those of you that have been watching my zero turn videos, I wanted to give you an update. The machine is in usable condition now. I've actually used it to cut a few customers this past week. And I wanted to show you a few things that I did. If you watched the first video, you saw that it was pretty much a basket case. Now right now I have the battery charger on it, but that's because I started it about 20 times today. I was working on a few other things. The first thing I did was I had to make a mounting panel here in order to put this control panel on. So basically what I did was I used bed frame, angle iron, and I made a C-shaped bracket here. I welded it together, and then I drilled holes through it and bolted it to the seat frame, same frame that's over there. I just bolted it there. So as I put up and down the seat, the panel goes with me, and it's good and strong. I can push on that pretty good, and it isn't going anywhere. So I mounted the switch for raising and lowering the deck back in its proper position. The key switch, this is your throttle and choke. So that's mounted again where I can sit in the seat and reach everything. Of course, all the original plastics were gone. So instead of worrying about trying to buy that to make it look pretty, I'm not going to sell this machine. I'm using this machine. I'm going to be using it to cut grass for the next year or two. It's a 52-inch cut, and it's a great machine. And so I've been using a push mower to cut grass with. I had a couple of lawns that I was just cutting to make extra money. In fact, there it is. It's in my trailer that goes on the back of my electric bike. And as an example, I had one lawn that I would cut with that, and it would take a little over an hour, about an hour and 10 minutes to cut it. I went and cut that same lawn 2 days ago with this zero turn right here, and it took me 13 minutes to cut it. So there's no more going back to the old self-propelled push mower, and that is self-propelled. I love sitting on this thing and just cruising around. Because I do not drive, I ride an electric bike. That's what that is, electric bike. What I've done in the last week or so is get lawns right here in my own neighborhood. So I actually drive this machine down the street to whatever lawns I'm cutting and then drive it home. And so I had to make a few other modifications to it. I made a little bracket here. Again, I'm famous for bed frames because you can find bed frames for free anywhere. People throw them away. So what I did here was I made a little sort of a T. I welded it together and made sort of a T. And now my weed eater sits there. Now it's just tied on there for the moment. I got to get a bungee for it. A bungee will go right here from the top across just to hold it in place. And the weed eater sets on the front axle. So when I'm driving down the road to get to a customer, it's not an issue. So now I can take my weed eater with me and I don't have to hold it. It's just kind of mounted. Now that's only temporary. I also drilled a few holes in this protector back here that goes around the fuel tank, and I used some thick zip ties to just put a milk crate on the back, as you can see, to hold an extra fuel tank. That's 2 gallons. That's a 3-gallon tank, so I got an extra 2 gallons. And then this, I just refill this myself. I don't buy this crap. Don't waste $10 buying a quarter of a gallon of fuel that's pre-mixed. I got my own oil right there. But I do use this because this will fill my weed eater, my nice commercial weed eater. This will fill that 4 times. So I use that little can. I carry my extra weed eater string and just some electrical tape. So there's not a lot of weight back there, but now I've just got a little added storage area back there for pliers and things like that. Anything that I might come across. Now this still looks a little you know, yeah, but this is what I've been working on today. The PTO switch did not work previously. I was using the guy that I got it from actually had another switch that came out with a little toggle switch he had wrapped around here, and I took that off and I priced that switch, and it was 27 bucks. And before I spend money on anything, I want to know you know, what I'm dealing with. I don't want to spend money on anything, so I always have extra PTO switches. Now, the wiring did not match. The wiring setup on them did not match. So what I ended up doing to make that work was, there are two wires that come off the bottom of the PTO right here. This goes to that switch and basically just makes a connection so that it makes a connection through a safety switch so that you can turn the key and start the machine, and it tells, by closing that part of the circuit off, it'll allow it to start. If the switch was not hooked up, then that would remain open, it wouldn't close the loop, it wouldn't start. So I cut those two wires, I twisted them together, and then just put some electrical tape around them so that they were making a connection all the time. So now when I hit the key, it starts right up. And then I plugged back, I don't know if you'll be able to see that, but I plugged the switch in such a way that these two were not inside the switch because they weren't necessary. But what that did was allow me to use another portion of the switch to connect and make the connection for when I pop the PTO switch on. Now, that is not the permanent solution. When I decide to spend the 25 bucks or whatever and buy a new switch, or I come across a switch that has that correct wiring set up on it, I will reconnect those two wires to that switch and then replace that switch. But for right now, the wiring diagram on that is different than the ones I just showed you. So instead of spending money on something I didn't need right now, and this is my machine so I don't care, I made it so that this worked. So I just want to show you real quick what we got going on. Bear with me. So basically now I have a turnkey mower, and there's only one problem left, and I'll tell you about that in a second. I'm going to take this battery charger off. I've been cutting all week with it, turning it off, starting it. It seems that the charging system's working fine, but today, like I said, I was working on that switch and I was testing all different wires, and I turned it on and off a few times, a bunch of times, and the battery finally got low. So I threw it back on the charger. With the brake in the locked position, everything's seated here. I can start the mower, then I'm going to turn on the blades, turn them back off, show you that everything works, and we are in a turnkey situation. So if you followed the last few videos on this, you would have seen me replace the flywheel and the starter gear. You would have seen me replace the starter gear on the starter. Even though I didn't need that one anymore, I still put the new gear on the other starter so it's ready for the next project. Some other machine that it'll be stuck on. Now the blades engage when you press the PTO switch. The blades turn on as they're supposed to. And as you can see, it's turnkey. I hit the key, she starts. She'll idle at low speed, she'll run at high speed, she drives just fine. I did not end up needing to put, sorry, I'm putting the legs up on my tripod. I did not end up needing to put tubes in the tires for the back. They were just low from sitting. I changed the oil, and that's pretty much all I did. Oh, I mounted the fuel tank properly. You've seen a video on that where I replaced the pickup in here. There is another problem that I found that has to be fixed this week. The parts house is closed. One of the issues is this is a hose that goes from the fuel pump into the valve cover, and this is what actually picks up that pulse of air and pumps your air pump. And this hose had split, so it was sucking air in. It wasn't working correctly. Sometimes the motor would run, sometimes it wouldn't. So I just wrapped some electrical tape around there. You can't use just any hose because of the way it goes into the top of the valve cover. It's a special hose, but it's only like $4, and I just need to go and pick one up, and then that'll be replaced, so that's all good. And the only other thing, there were two other problems with it. One, when they put the new wheels on, they just used bolts, and the wheels were flopping around in there and getting stuck and getting caught, and it wasn't smooth, and something was going to break. So I actually went down to the parts warehouse and I got the proper bearing shaft. I only bought one because I didn't have the parts with me and I needed to make sure they were going to fit, and it cost $10 for that sleeve. So I fixed one wheel. It took about 7 minutes. I'm going to fix the other wheel, and I'll make a video on that real quick, just on what it is. It's just a sleeve that inserts into the wheel, then the bolt goes through it and it holds it. It acts like a bearing, and it was like $9, I think. So I got to do the other wheel, which will take all of 7 minutes. I'll pick up that part as well as that little hose that goes to the fuel pump, and so I'll have another, what, $15 into it or something. The last problem that I have, and I've been using this mower to cut grass with for the last few days, or for the last week or so, all of the lawns that I cut, including mine, are just regular old grass, real thin grass. In Florida, in rich people neighborhoods where people are spending upwards of, $300,000 or more on their houses, they have what's called Floratam, which is a grass that's made of a vine, and it gets 2, 3, 4, 5 inches thick, like a carpet, and it grows and intertwines in itself. In order to cut those lawns, which that's about half the lawns down here, you must use a zero turn, because a zero turn is the only thing that's tall enough off the ground that you can raise and lower the deck to reach the right height. If you try to use a riding mower, it doesn't raise high enough, and you will cut the top. You'll cut all the grass off, just leaving the vines underneath. That's what we call scalping, and you'll ruin the lawn at a $300,000 or $400,000 house. And that's why you don't see everybody out and about just cutting grass with a riding lawnmower. You can't get the height. So all the lawns that I cut in my neighborhood are all just regular old thin grass. And the deck is in the down position on this because the deck motor no longer works. It's in position down here. That's this motor right here. I put power to it. I unplugged it in case there was some safety switch somewhere. I put direct power to the motor and nothing happened. So that's the last problem. The motor, the electric motor for that, when I looked it up online, is about $120. I found one used one that was damaged but still worked, and it was like $40 or $50. So over the course of the next week or so, I'm going to do a real good search. I spoke to my friend that owns the junkyard for these things, and because there's very few machines that actually use that, most of them are mechanical. You push a pedal and it raises the deck. This was something Craftsman tried, and John Deere, I think, tried, and he rarely comes across them, and when he does, he doesn't bother to keep them in stock because nobody has these things. So it's the only expensive problem on this entire machine. If you've watched the videos, I got the flywheel and starter for free off of a donor motor that someone gave us to scrap. I spent $10 on that front axle, and so far, other than that, I put on $4 worth of fuel line and a new fuel filter, changed the oil, and I think $2 or $3 to fix the fuel tank. And that's it. I made the bracket to remount that That was bed frames. People give me bed frames. I see them laying on the side of the road. People throw them away. And I just pick them up and bring them home, because I will cut them and weld them together and make all kinds of shit with them. So if you ever see people throwing them away and you wonder what the heck would I do with an old bed frame, well, I'll tell you, they're indispensable. I made a welding table to hold my welder and everything. I make tables with them for workshops. You know, I make stuff here. And if you look at this and you never seen what it originally was supposed to look like, you can't tell me that that looks too damn bad. And it needs to be painted, because you can see a little rust coming through. But it doesn't look too bad. It mounts my stuff. That holds my weed eater. And I actually left it long on purpose, because when I get my stick edger, it's going to have to go next to it. I may do something else with it. But for right now, I can put my blower on here. I carry my fuel with me. I got my weed eater. I don't edge too many properties. But right now, I can use this to drive to work. And I make 35 to 40 bucks to cut somebody's grass. And I cut several lawns. So I've got, you know, 15 bucks into it. It would have cost me less than 100 if I had to buy the starter and the flywheel and the other stuff. So the next thing I'm going to do, and the last thing, well, I'm going to make a video. I'll probably add the video on inserting that sleeve in the wheel along with this next video, which is going to be, it's time. I've got to remove that electric motor, because right now I cannot raise or lower my deck. It's a shitty design that you can't raise and lower this thing manually. If that motor does not work, that deck does not move. There is no way to raise it and lower it manually. I tried turning the screw on the pump on the motor. No good. It won't do it. So today, after this video I'm going to remove that motor, take a look at it, put power directly to it, see if there's anything I can do to bring it back to life. And I have no idea how it comes apart, how it comes off the machine. It doesn't look too complicated, but half of it you can't see. It's only about the size of my fist. And that's it. I'm pulling that thing off right now. That the deck is at its lowest position, basically hanging, and there are wheels on the deck, so it can't go any lower, even if I'm hitting hills. And that's the perfect height for cutting the kinds of lawns that I've been cutting. So now, in order for me to make sure that this thing is completely turnkey, ugly as it may be, I got to pull that motor. So thanks for stopping by. I hope this helped you out. Remember, I paid $1 for this machine thanks to a subscriber named Carlitos. He wanted to know what it was going to take to make this thing work. There was a bunch of little problems with it, and most of the stuff was able to be fixed, bypassed, you know, for less than 100 bucks. And I actually got $15 into it or whatever. But a bunch of problems, 6, 8, 10 different problems with it. All little, all stupid, all working together to make this a non-usable machine. I put a few hours of my time into it, fixed a few things, and I'm using it to make extra money. And I love it, and it runs great. So thanks again, Carlitos. There will be one more video after this showing how to remove that motor and how to test it and replace it, and how to fix that front tire. Hit the like button. It's right down there underneath my chin. Subscribe for me if you haven't already. We're almost at 800. And I'd like to get to 1,000 so I can start making some money. Anyway, thanks for coming by. See you soon.